At 6:03 a.m., a school bus stalled at a railroad crossing in Nettle Ridge, Tennessee. 43 seconds later, a freight train appeared around the bend too fast to stop. And yet, somehow, the bus was gone by the time the train roared through. The man responsible? A retired groundskeeper named Roy, who lived in a shack behind the local elementary school. Until that morning, no one even knew his last name. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to like the video. The shack wasn't much. A slanted metal roof. One window, always fogged. Tools stacked in milk crates outside. A lawn chair that creaked when the wind blew through it. Most of the kids thought he didn't live there. Thought maybe it was storage. Until they saw Roy walk out of it every morning just before sunrise. Same gray overalls, same beat-up boots, same blank expression like nothing in the world had the power to move him anymore. No one really talked to Roy. He didn't like being looked at. Didn't answer to Sir, Mr., or even Roy most days. He just mowed the grass, fixed the swings, painted the lines on the football field, tightened loose screws on benches before they even squeaked. The school principal, Ms. Danvers, kept trying to get him officially on payroll. But Roy refused. No need, he'd say. Just keep the kids from playing near the edge of the creek. His voice was always low, like the hum of an old machine you forgot was still running. On most mornings, people forgot he was there at all. Until that one. The day the bus stalled. The morning everything changed. It started like any other. Fog, frost, and the screech of brakes on dew-slick asphalt. But the moment the bus stopped on the tracks, Roy stood up from where he'd been painting a parking stripe near the faculty lot. He turned fast, dropped the roller, and ran. He ran like someone who had trained to run toward disaster. The crossing lights weren't flashing. The gates didn't drop. But Roy knew. He sprinted faster than a man his age had any right to. Cut across the gravel field behind the school. Vaulted the chain-link fence that had stopped high school athletes twice his size. And reached the driver's side of the bus just in time to yell, "Neutral. Push it." The driver, frozen, wide-eyed, obeyed. Roy jammed his shoulder into the bumper. The train was visible now. The horn howled. The engine thundered. Kids inside were screaming. But the wheels moved. An inch. Then 2. Roy dug his boots in. The train was 30 seconds away. Then 15. Then 10. And suddenly, the bus rolled clear. Roy fell to the ground, chest heaving. The train screamed through the crossing just 3 seconds later. No one was hurt. But the town would never be the same. For the next hour, the school became a scene from a movie no one wanted to be in. Emergency vehicles swarmed in. Police cars. Fire engines. An ambulance, though no one needed it. Yet, parents cried. Teachers shook. The kids, 23 of them, sat on the grass with silver emergency blankets wrapped around their shoulders, asking variations of the same question. Who was that man? The driver, still trembling, managed to say, "I didn't even know he worked here." When Roy finally stood, someone handed him a water bottle. He didn't take it. Just nodded once, limped back to his shack, and shut the door. He didn't come out for the rest of the day. Not when Channel 7 News set up a camera on the playground. Not when the sheriff knocked twice on his door. Not even when Ms. Danvers stood outside with a thank you card signed by every kid on the bus. Inside the shack, Roy sat on a wooden crate, hands still shaking. His shoulder throbbed from where it hit the bumper. He hadn't run that fast since. No, don't think about that. Not now. He lit the old kerosene heater in the corner and stared at the folded American flag on the wall above his cot. Beneath it, taped with fading electrical tape, a single photograph, 12 men in desert camouflage. One of them, barely in frame, looked like Roy. Younger, leaner, eyes full of something he'd long since buried. That night, Jamie, a junior teacher with short hair and a sharp mind, knocked on the door. "Roy, nothing. I just wanted to say thank you. The kids, they're okay because of you." Still nothing. She waited. Then, through the door, "Don't thank me. Thank whoever didn't bolt that emergency brake tight. They're the reason it stalled." She smiled softly. "You always blame yourself, don't you?" Silence. Then, a whisper. "Not always." By morning, the internet had caught fire. Retired veteran saves dozens in bus standoff. Man in shack is hero mechanic from classified military convoy rescue. Speculation poured in. Reddit threads analyzed the one grainy photo of Roy from the train station surveillance cam. People zoomed in on the way he ran. His gait. His shoulder stance. One post claimed, "That's Delta Force posture. I'd bet my pension." The town didn't know what to believe. But one man did. Sheriff Alan Marks, who'd served in Fallujah. He drove to Roy's shack that night, unannounced. No questions. No accusations. He just placed a single army issue patch on Roy's stoop. A faded, sandblasted insignia. Task Force Iron Badger. Roy opened the door halfway, looked down, then said, almost inaudibly, "I thought no one remembered." Marks met his eyes. Some of us never forgot. And for the first time in 20 years, Roy stepped outside the door not as a groundskeeper, but as a man with a story the town needed to hear. If you believe real heroes never ask for thanks, type respect in the comments. Who do you know that hides behind routine but once stood in fire? Let them be seen. What's the most heroic thing you've witnessed in silence? Share it below. If you believe some uniforms get folded but never disappear, share this story. Type never forget if you believe courage doesn't always look the way you expect. By Monday morning, reporters lined the sidewalk across from Nettle Ridge Elementary. Some held cameras. Some held microphones. All held the same question. Who exactly is Roy? Inside the school, Ms. Danvers locked her office door, turned off the lights, and watched the news cycle spiral. Some outlets speculated he was ex-CIA. Others dug up public records showing a Royden C. Harlan with ties to a now-defunct logistics unit under U.S. CENTCOM. One post went viral. The man who dragged 6 Marines out of a burning convoy now lives in a tool shed behind a playground. Roy didn't respond, but the pressure built. Sheriff Marks returned Tuesday night, this time with Jamie. She knocked, then stepped back. "We're not here for the press," she said. "We're here because people are starting to invent things about you." Silence. She continued. "Let us tell the truth before someone else tells the wrong version." The door creaked open. Roy stood in the frame, eyes tired. Not angry, just haunted. He nodded once, then stepped aside. Inside the shack, it was warmer than anyone expected. Organized. A map of the Middle East tacked to one wall, colored pins marking places long forgotten by the headlines. Under the cot, 2 crates of tools. Above it, a small corkboard filled with notes. Jamie leaned closer. Each note had a child's name. And beside it, scribbled updates. Walks to school alone. Bullied last spring. Stays late. Waits for brother. "You kept track of them," she whispered. Roy nodded. Someone had to. Then he reached into the footlocker beside his cot and pulled out a folder. Handed it to Sheriff Marks. Inside, citations. Operation summaries. Deployment logs. A few pages were half-burned. Others barely legible. But one stood out. Emergency evacuation orchestrated under fire, Harlan. RC retrieved 3 vehicles under hostile contact. No air support. Unit extracted. No casualties. Marks blinked. This was classified. Was, Roy said. Not anymore. Jamie turned to him. "Why did you never tell anyone?" He shrugged. "Telling doesn't fix engines. Doesn't keep kids safe." That night, Sheriff Marks called a contact at the VA. 2 days later, a plain envelope arrived, marked with a single word. Recognized. Inside, a certificate of service. A formal record reactivation. And a sealed letter from the Department of Defense. Jamie read it aloud. "Mr. Royden C. Harlan is hereby acknowledged for acts of service rendered under extreme conditions, formerly uncredited due to classification constraints. His contributions are now part of the permanent federal archive." The next morning, Roy opened the door to his shack and found something strange. Kids had left notes. Crayon drawings. Letters like, "Thanks for saving us. You're strong like Captain America. My dad says you're the reason I still have a brother." Roy didn't cry, but he left the door open that day. And for the first time, he walked into the school without his cap pulled low. The principal greeted him at the entrance. "Morning, Mr. Harlan." He paused, then gave a small smile. "Call me Roy. If you believe some battles never make it to the news, but still shape the world, type respect in the comments. Who's someone you know that lives humbly, but has done the extraordinary? Say their name below. Have you ever learned that someone you thought was ordinary had a past full of courage? Share it. If you believe stories like Roy's deserve more than silence, share this with someone today. Type never forget if you believe every hero has a story, even if they never asked to tell it. Nettle Ridge had always been the kind of place where things moved slow. Headlines faded. Curiosity passed. But something about Roy's story refused to vanish. The kids still left him notes. The bus driver still kept a wrench on the dashboard, engraved with the words he didn't hesitate. And Jamie? She kept asking questions. Not for gossip, but for truth. She sat with Roy each Thursday now. No recorder. Just a notepad. A quiet promise that nothing would be shared unless he approved. At first, he gave short answers. Grunts. Nods. But then one night, while sharpening a blade for the playground mower, he spoke. Do you know what a thermal bleed is? Jamie blinked. No. Roy looked up. Good. Means you didn't serve in a desert convoy. And just like that, the floodgates opened. He told her about mile marker 9. About the call that came at 0200. A convoy stuck in the valley. Radiator failure. Sandstorm incoming. No air support. No backup. By the time I got there, he said, 2 vehicles were smoking. Men were screaming. One driver had a leg pinned under the wheel. Couldn't move. They radioed it as a possible total loss. I radioed back. Give me 15 minutes. He pulled 3 of them out. Rewired a cooling system using water bottles and salvaged copper. Used a crowbar and an ammo crate to shift the axle. One of the soldiers, barely 19, looked up at him and whispered, You're just a mechanic? Roy had answered, I'm the reason this convoy moves. Jamie wrote that down. He didn't stop her. The next day, she posted a message on the school bulletin board. Ask Roy what he's fixed. He'll tell you about engines. Ask what he's saved. He won't say a word. The town began to shift. Sheriff Marks hosted a community event, Quiet Heroes Among Us. Roy didn't show, but he watched from behind the bleachers, arms crossed, eyes scanning not for threats, for kids. That weekend, a retired colonel from Fort Benning drove into town. He handed Jamie a box. Inside, a set of forged wrenches, each marked Harlan. One was bent at the neck. Saved my life in 2007, the colonel said. His tools, his timing. We were trapped behind a collapsed bridge in Kandahar. He got the truck operational in 17 minutes. Under fire. He paused. Didn't even wait for thanks. Just tossed me the keys and said, drive like hell. Jamie added the tools to a new display near the playground. She called it the Toolshed Archive. Kids asked questions. Parents shared stories. And one child, a 5th grader named Mason, wrote an essay called The Man Who Fixed the Bus and Everything Else. It ended with, maybe we shouldn't wait for people to be on fire to tell them we're glad they were here. When Roy read it, he folded it 3 times, slid it into his breast pocket, and said, that kid's got more wisdom than most of Congress. He didn't laugh. But Jamie swore she saw a smile tug at the corner of his mouth. If someone ever saved your life quietly, without making it about them, type respect in the comments. Have you ever learned a piece of history from someone who never bragged? Share the story. What's one tool or lesson you carry from someone like Roy? Post it below. If you believe some heroes walk beside us wearing boots, not capes, share this story. Type never forget if you agree that what's hidden in silence is often the most powerful legacy. It was Jamie who noticed it. Behind the old football shed, half buried in ivy, rusted through at the base, a green military locker. The kind you only see in old films or behind high-security gates on base. It hadn't been moved in years. Maybe decades. At first, she thought it was trash. Then she saw the initials. RCH. Roy's. She didn't open it. Not at first. Instead, she waited for Thursday, their now ritual hour of silence and slow conversation. She brought it up gently. Casually. There's an old locker behind the shed. Yours. Roy didn't flinch. Didn't blink. He just said, didn't think it was still there. She waited. He sighed. That's from before the town. Before I stopped wearing tags. It wasn't supposed to follow me. Jamie asked, can I see what's inside? He looked away. Then, if you open it, don't do it expecting answers. You'll find more questions. They walked out together at dusk, when stirring dry leaves across the grass. He didn't rush, just limped, like the weight of time dragged behind every step. At the locker, he hesitated, then pulled a single key from a chain he wore beneath his flannel. She hadn't noticed it before. The lock snapped open. The door groaned. Inside, neatly arranged despite the corrosion, were artifacts. Not memorabilia. Proof. A torn field notebook. Coordinates. Photos of engines burned out under blackened skies. A knife. Blood on the handle. A helmet with a single bullet graze, cracked but intact. A U.S. flag folded so tightly the corners had sharpness. Jamie reached for a dusty binder labeled J-72 convoy locks. Roy stopped her. That one's hard. She waited. He opened it himself. Inside, pages of handwritten notes. Field failures. Mechanical locks. But halfway through, the entries changed. Became personal. 1. Dated June 2003. We lost the lead truck today. Radiator blew 10 clicks from extraction point. 1 dead. 3 injured. I reconfigured the coolant lines using MRE foil and duct tape. It held. Barely. Soldier named Pope cried when it restarted. Said I was a magician. I'm not. I just didn't want another body on my count. Jamie looked up. You kept all this. Roy nodded. Every failure. Every fix. You don't forget the things that went wrong. You study them. He pulled out one more item. A photograph. Faded. Edges curled. 12 men. All smiling. One held a wrench above his head like a sword. Roy was in the back, not smiling. They called us Iron Badger, he said, because we never stopped moving forward. Not even when we should have. He pointed to the man in the center. Sergeant Kale. My best friend. Died saving me. Stepped in front of a sniper shot. I never got the blood out of this locker. Still smells like sand and metal. Jamie stood silent, unable to respond. Roy said softly, this locker isn't for me. It's for them. They were better than I ever was. They fixed me. That night, Jamie posted a single sentence on the school's online bulletin. Sometimes, what we call quiet is just the weight of everything unsaid. The next morning, someone placed a wreath outside Roy's shack. No note. No name. Just a wrench, tied with a ribbon. By sunset, there were 7 more. The locker stayed behind the shed. But now, every child who passed it whispered, as if it held ghosts. Because in a way, it did. If you believe some burdens are carried in silence for decades, type respect in the comments. Who do you know that keeps more stories locked away than they'll ever share? Honor them here. Have you ever seen an object that holds a memory too heavy to speak aloud? Tell us what it was. If you believe remembering others is the purest form of respect, share this story. Type never forget if you agree that some ghosts deserve to be carried, not buried. The town had begun to shift in ways no one fully understood. Roy still didn't speak much. Still fixed the broken sprinkler systems and patched the school roof himself instead of calling contractors. But the way people looked at him had changed. They stopped seeing a man with grease under his nails. They started seeing a threshold. The line between what most people lived and what most would never survive. One evening, during a sudden thunderstorm, the roof began to leak over the kindergarten classroom. Jamie found Roy already on top of the building, tarp in one hand, flashlight in the other, soaked through. You didn't even wait, she called up. Roy shouted over the rain. Leaks don't wait. Neither should I. She climbed the ladder to help. As they worked, lightning cracked open the sky. And for just a second, she saw it. A tattoo on his back, just below the collar. Faded. Almost indistinguishable. But she'd studied enough now to recognize what it was. A list of names. 15 of them. Etched into flesh. No ranks. No birth dates. Just last names, in a single vertical line down his spine. Roy noticed her gaze. He didn't cover it. Instead, he said, I had it done in Kuwait. Week after the convoy hit that minefield. My whole squad made it back, but the ones before us didn't. These names weren't on any wall. So I made my own. He turned back to the storm, kept working. Jamie stood frozen, blinking through the rain. That night, she posted another bulletin at the school. Heroes don't collect names. They carry them. 2 days later, Mason, the 5th grader who'd written the essay, asked to interview Roy for a school project. Roy declined at first, then changed his mind. But only under one condition. No video. No recordings. Just paper and pencil. And one question at a time. Mason agreed. They sat outside the shack every afternoon for a week. One question per day. And each answer revealed something new. What's the first thing you ever fixed? A canteen. 1972, Vietnam. It leaked. My sergeant said patch it or go thirsty. I used a rubber boot heel. Held for 3 days. What's the most important thing you ever fixed? A radio during a blackout. Without it, we couldn't call for medevac. A kid lived because I stripped copper from a flashlight and bridged the fuse. What's the hardest thing to fix? People. Because they pretend they're fine long after they've snapped. Mason listened, scribbled, nodded. And on the final day, he asked, What broke you, Mr. Roy? Roy didn't answer right away, just stared out across the playground. Then said, Seeing good men die for bad reasons. And not being able to fix that. Mason quietly tore a piece of paper from his notebook. Wrote something. Folded it. Gave it to Roy. Then walked away. Roy opened it slowly. It said, You fixed me. Thank you. That night, Roy didn't sleep. Instead, he opened the footlocker again. Pulled out the old logbook. Turned to a blank page. and began to write. Not about battles, not about machines, but about people. The ones who broke, the ones who didn't, the ones who bent the world just enough to save someone else, even if it cracked them in the process. That entry became the first chapter of what Jamie would later compile as The Quiet Fix, field notes from a man who stayed behind. And somehow, the town began to breathe deeper, because Roy had taught them something they didn't even know they were missing. That the strongest repairs aren't the ones that shine. They're the ones that hold. If someone's pain made your healing possible, type respect in the comments. Who are the names you carry? On your skin, in your mind, in your silence. Say one out loud here. What's the thing in your life that someone else fixed, even if it cost them? Share it below. If you believe legacy isn't what you build, it's what you carry, share this story. Type never forget if you agree that some names live best when whispered, not shouted. Winter crept into Nettle Ridge like a secret. Cold enough to sting, quiet enough to remember. The toolshed archive now filled an entire wing of the school basement. Old uniforms, schematics, Roy's handwritten repair logs, Mason's essay laminated on the wall. It had become more than a display. It was a breathing thing, a living memory disguised as bolts, grease, and graphite. But Roy didn't visit it. Not once. Not even when invited. Jamie asked him why, gently, during one of their now frequent Thursday sit-downs. He stared at the steam rising from his chipped mug of coffee. Because it's for them, he said finally. Not for me. That weekend, Jamie received a package. No return address. Inside, a military-grade binder, duct-taped at the edges. Weathered. Smelled faintly of diesel and something older. Gun oil, maybe. A single note inside, typed on yellowing paper. You've earned this. Pass it forward. Use what saves. The binder was labeled. Field Manual, unofficial. She opened it. Page 1. This is not a manual for machines. It is for people who refuse to break. The contents weren't instructions. They were stories. Vividly detailed, brutally honest accounts of makeshift saves, mechanical and moral. Each one annotated with hand-drawn diagrams. Quotes scribbled in margins. One page read, Sandstorm blew out 3 turbines. Morale was worse than the fuel leak. So I made them laugh. I told them about the time I accidentally crosswired a Humvee to a field radio and broadcasted polka music on secure channel. It worked. They smiled. Then they moved. Another. Private Briggs disassembled his rifle wrong. Couldn't reassemble it. I made him fix it using only a spoon and blindfolded. Not for punishment. For memory. You never forget what you rebuild. Jamie read through the night. The book was more than information. It was philosophy. Pain forged into strategy. Fear mapped into resilience. She made a choice the next morning. She started copying it. One chapter at a time. Binding it under a new title. The Fixer's Guide to Holding Together. And the first class began 2 weeks later. Not for soldiers. For students. Kids who'd been bullied. Kids who felt small. Kids who needed more than just test scores to believe they mattered. Roy didn't teach, but he sat in the back of every class. Listened as Jamie read aloud sections from the binder. Watched as hands went up. Saw eyes light with understanding. One boy, Ben, quiet, always drawing, asked a question. Why didn't Mr. Roy want to be famous for all this? Roy looked up. Because the world needs less fame. And more fixing. The room was silent. Then the kids clapped. Slow at first. Then loud. Not because they were told to. Because something inside them stood up. That night, Roy returned to the toolshed archive for the first time. He didn't touch anything. Just stood there. Looked at the items. And whispered something to the wall of names. Still watching. Still holding. If someone ever gave you tools to rebuild your life, type respect in the comments. Have you ever found healing in someone else's quiet? Share their name, their lesson. What story would you write in your own field manual? One sentence is enough. Post it. If you believe passing on strength is the purest form of heroism, share this story. Type never forget if you believe the strongest manuals are written in sweat, silence, and second chances. The day Roy passed, it snowed for the first time in over a decade. Not the kind of snow that blankets and blinds. The kind that remembers. Soft, slow, gentle, like the world was trying not to disturb the quiet man who had carried too much for too long. Jamie found him just before sunrise, in the shack. Sitting upright, boots laced, jacket zipped, as if he had one more repair to make. One more kid to shield. In his lap, Mason's letter. In his hand, a pen. The notebook open beside him, the final sentence written. If it breaks, and you're there, you fix it. Even if it's not your job. Especially then. He hadn't signed it. He didn't need to. The funeral was held in the gymnasium, not because of weather, but because there wasn't another place big enough. Every seat taken. Standing room filled. Children sitting cross-legged in the aisles. Veterans in dress uniform. Mechanics in oil-stained coveralls. Teachers. Principals. Janitors. Marines. No one tried to make it formal. No one tried to make it fancy. Just real. Just him. Jamie Reed first. She didn't cry. Until the part where she said, he didn't want medals. He wanted function. He didn't want applause. He wanted traction. Roy wasn't a hero because of what he did during war. He was a hero because when the war ended, he kept fixing anyway. Then the doors opened, and they entered. 25 men and women in perfect formation. All of them wearing the Iron Badger insignia. Some limped. Some had visible scars. All carried something in their hands. Pieces of the past. A torn flag. A patch. A broken fuse. A gear. A rusted bolt. Each one stepped forward, placed their piece in a glass box, and saluted. The last to step up was Colonel Ames, retired, now gray, but still towering. He spoke directly to the casket. You were the reason half of us lived. You were the reason the rest of us wanted to. You didn't just keep the wheels turning. You kept the men from falling off. He turned to the crowd. And if there's any honor in what we did, it was borrowed from this man. Then, without cue or coordination, the entire gym stood and placed their right hands over their hearts. No anthem played. No bugle blew. But still, it felt like the sky saluted. In the days that followed, something unusual happened. Letters arrived. From every state. From units Roy had never served in, but where his name had been passed down as legend. Each letter ended with a variation of the same phrase. We never met, but you fixed something in me. Jamie compiled them, bound them in a thick navy blue volume, placed it in the toolshed archive under the final exhibit. The manual that fixed the forgotten. Today, if you visit Nettle Ridge Elementary, you'll see a plaque beside the playground. It doesn't mention war, or heroism, or even his last name. It simply says, if you ever see something broken, this is your permission to fix it. Roy. The kids touch it every morning. Some whisper thank you. Others just smile. But all of them, every single one, know who he was. Not because they were told, but because they felt it. And somewhere beyond the hills, where the radio static still hums and the wind carries dust from old battlefields, someone out there, someone new, someone young, is holding a wrench a little tighter tonight. Because a man they never met refused to let anything stay broken. And now, it's their turn. If this story moved you, type respect in the comments. Say the name of someone who fixed something no one else would. They deserve to be remembered. What part of your life was mended by someone's quiet act? Share it below. If you believe legacy lives in action, not headlines, share this story. Type never forget if you agree. Some fixes echo longer than applause ever could. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let YouTube promote stories of kindness.